Corporal Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his brow, the Texas sun beating down mercilessly on the Fort Hood training grounds. It was July 15th, 2038, and the United States Marine Corps was running its usual drills. Or at least they were trying to. Martinez. Eyes, Front Sergeant Kowalski barked. Jake snapped his attention back to the holographic display, but he wasn't the only one distracted. Every few seconds, Marines would glance up at the sky, searching for any sign of the alien ships that had appeared in Earth's orbit 3 days ago. The Immortals. That's what the media was calling them. Beings of supposed eternal life, traveling the stars in ships that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. As Jake repositioned his squad's holograms on the tactical display, a sudden commotion erupted across the base. Alarms blared, and the sky lit up with streaks of light descending from orbit. This is not a drill. All personnel to battle stations, the base AI's voice echoed across the grounds. Jake's heart raced as he sprinted to the armory with his squad. The day they'd all been training for hoping would never come was here. Minutes later, fully geared up in their M4, a C-2 combat suits, Jake and his squad piled into a V-280 Valor tiltrotor. As they lifted off, Jake caught his first glimpse of the alien ships breaking through the clouds, sleek, silver craft that seemed to defy physics. "Holy shit," Private Cooper whispered beside him. The Valor's pilot came over the comms. "We've got reports of alien landings in Houston. That's where we're headed, Marines. Godspeed." The flight to Houston was tense, filled with the chatter of global communications reporting alien landings worldwide. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, nowhere seemed safe. As they approached Houston, Jake saw a city under siege. Skyscrapers were ablaze, and strange energy fields cordoned off entire districts. "LZ is hot. Prepare for combat drop," the pilot shouted. Jake's training kicked in as he leapt from the Valor, his suit's thrusters softening his landing. The scene on the ground was chaos. Houston PD and local National Guard units were engaging the aliens, but their weapons seemed to have little effect. That's when Jake saw them up close for the first time. The Immortals stood nearly 8 feet tall, encased in armor that shimmered with an otherworldly energy. Their movements were fluid, almost graceful, as they advanced through a hail of gunfire. "Conventional weapons aren't working," Sergeant Kowalski shouted. "Switch to high-X rounds." Jake slammed a new magazine into his M55, a .3 assault rifle. The weapon hummed as it charged the experimental ammunition. An Immortal turned towards Jake, its featureless helmet regarding him for a moment before raising a weapon of its own. Jake didn't hesitate. He squeezed the trigger, and a burst of superheated explosive rounds erupted from his rifle. The effect was immediate and shocking. Where normal bullets had bounced off, the high explosive rounds punched through the alien's energy field and armor. The Immortal staggered, green ichor spraying from its wounds. "Holy," Jake breathed. "They can bleed." For a moment, the alien seemed just as surprised as the humans. Then, before their eyes, its wounds began to close. "Don't let up," Kowalski ordered. "Keep firing." Jake and his squad poured fire into the Immortal. Under the barrage of explosives, even its remarkable healing factor couldn't keep up. With a final, otherworldly shriek, the alien fell. A cheer went up from the human forces, quickly tempered by the reality of their situation. They'd killed one, but dozens more were advancing through the city. As Jake reloaded, his mind raced. The Immortals could be hurt, could be killed. Humanity had a chance. Martinez, Kowalski called out, "Get on the horn. Tell command what we've learned. High explosives and sustained fire, that's how we beat these beasts." As Jake relayed the information, he watched his fellow Marines press the attack with renewed vigor. The Immortals were fearsome, but they weren't invincible. And if there was one thing Jake knew about humanity, it was that they excelled at killing things that were hard to kill. The battle for Houston, for Earth, was just beginning. But for the first time since the alien ships appeared, Jake felt a glimmer of hope. The Immortals had come expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they'd found an enemy ready to fight to the last breath. And Jake Martinez, U.S. Marine, was ready to show these aliens just how lethal mortality could be. 2 weeks had passed since the initial Immortal landings, and Houston had become a war zone. Corporal Jake Martinez crouched behind the burnt-out husk of a city bus, the acrid smell of smoke and ozone filling his nostrils. His squad was tasked with clearing the aliens from the downtown financial district, block by grueling block. Wildfire Actual, this is Bravo 2. Jake spoke into his comm. We've got eyes on an Immortal patrol, corner of Main and McKinney. Requesting fire support, over. Copy that, Bravo 2, came the reply. Danger close fire mission incoming. Mark your target. Jake pulled a small laser designator from his gear, painting the lead Immortal with an invisible beam. Seconds later, the street erupted in a massive fireball as a thermobaric missile streaked in from a nearby gunship. The explosion rocked the entire block, shattering windows and setting off car alarms. As the smoke cleared, Jake saw the Immortals sprawled on the ground, their armor cracked and bodies broken. Move up, Sergeant Kowalski ordered. Confirm the kills. Jake and his squad advanced cautiously. They'd learned the hard way that even grievously wounded Immortals could be deadly. As they approached, one of the aliens stirred, its limbs twisting unnaturally as it began to regenerate. Jake didn't hesitate. He pulled the pin on an incendiary grenade and tossed it onto the prone form. The alien screeched as it was engulfed in white-hot flames, its regenerative abilities unable to keep pace with the continuing damage. After a few moments, it lay still. All targets neutralized, Jake reported, his voice grim. The euphoria of discovering the Immortals could be killed had long since faded, replaced by the grim reality of a brutal urban war. Good work, Bravo 2 Wildfire Actual responded. New orders incoming. We're pushing towards the alien command post. Rendezvous with Alpha Company at Houston Center in 20 mics. As they moved through the ravaged streets of Houston, Jake marveled at how quickly humanity had adapted. In just 2 weeks, they'd revamped their entire arsenal. Incendiary rounds, plasma weapons, and even old-fashioned flamethrowers had been rushed to the front lines. Anything that could cause continuous damage fast enough to overwhelm the Immortals' healing factor. They arrived at Houston Center to find it transformed into a fortified command post. Engineers had rigged the entire structure with enough explosives to level a small town. Colonel Harris, the operations commander, was waiting for them. Listen up, Marines. Intel suggests the aliens are using the Bank of America Center as their local headquarters. We're going to hit it with everything we've got. He pointed to a holographic map of downtown. Martinez, your squad will approach from the underground tunnels. When you're in position, give the signal. We'll light up the top floors with airstrikes, and you'll breach from below. Questions? Jake studied the map, noting the access points and potential choke points. Rules of engagement, sir. The colonel's face hardened. These beasts came here to wipe us out, Corporal. As far as I'm concerned, the Geneva Convention doesn't apply to aliens. You encounter any of those Immortal freaks, you put them down. Hard and permanent. Clear. Crystal, Sir Jake nodded. An hour later, Jake led his squad through the dark, damp tunnels beneath Houston streets. The silence was eerie, broken only by the distant rumble of explosions above and the splash of their boots in puddles. In position, Jake whispered into his comm as they reached the access point beneath the Bank of America Center. Copy that, Bravo 2, came the reply. Airstrike commencing in 3, 2, 1. The ground shook violently as explosions rocked the building above them. Jake counted to 10, then gave the signal. His demolitions expert, Cooper, placed a shaped charge on the access hatch. Fire in the hole. The explosion blew the hatch clean off. Jake was first through, his weapon up and scanning for targets. The basement level was clear, but he could hear the sounds of combat above. As they ascended through the building, they encountered pockets of Immortal resistance. The aliens fought with a desperation Jake hadn't seen before. It was almost as if they're afraid, he realized aloud as he emptied a magazine into an Immortal trying to regenerate from a nasty plasma burn. What was that? Corporal Kowalski asked as he lobbed an incendiary grenade down the hallway. The Immortals, Sarge. They're afraid of dying. I don't think they've faced anything like this before. Kowalski grunted as he reloaded. Good. Let's give AM something to really be scared of. They fought their way up to the executive floors, where they found the alien command center. The immortal leader, distinguished by its more elaborate armor, was frantically operating some kind of communication device. Jake didn't give it a chance to finish. He shouldered his grenade launcher and fired a white phosphorus round directly at the alien. The resulting explosion and chemical fire consumed the immortal and most of the command equipment. As the flames died down, an eerie silence fell over the building. Jake realized the sounds of combat had ceased. Wildfire actual. This is Bravo 2, he reported. Alien command post neutralized. I think we've taken the city. The comm exploded with cheers and congratulations. They'd done it. They'd driven the Immortals out of Houston. As Jake looked out over the smoking skyline of his home state's largest city, he felt a mix of pride and determination. They'd proven that humanity could stand against the Immortals, could even defeat them. But he knew this was just the beginning. The Immortals still held much of the Earth, and they wouldn't give up easily. The war was far from over. Jake checked his weapon and turned to his squad. All right, Marines, let's go see who else needs some help kicking these alien beasts off our planet. With renewed purpose, they headed back down to the streets of Houston, ready to take the fight to the enemy wherever they found them. The late summer sun beat down on the tarmac of Andrews Air Force Base as Corporal Jake Martinez stood at attention with his squad. It had been 2 months since the Battle of Houston, and the war had reached a stalemate. Humanity had managed to push back the Immortals from major population centers, but at a tremendous cost. Today, however, was different. Jake and his unit weren't here to deploy to another battlefront, but to provide security for what could be the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. Eyes sharp, Marine Sergeant Kowalski barked. Our guests are arriving. Jake's eyes widened as he saw the craft descending from the sky. It wasn't the sleek, menacing design of the Immortals' ships, but something entirely different. The vessel looked almost organic, with sweeping lines and an iridescent surface that seemed to shift colors as it moved. As the ship touched down, a hush fell over the assembled human dignitaries and military personnel. The vessel's hull rippled, and an opening appeared. Jake tightened his grip on his rifle as the first alien emerged. The being that stepped out was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It stood on 3 legs, its body a mass of tentacles crowned by a bulbous head with multiple eyes. Behind it came 2 more aliens, each a different species. One looked almost avian, with feathers and a sharp beak, while the other seemed to be made of living crystal. Holy shit, Jake heard Cooper mutter beside him. At ease, Marine Kowalski whispered. They're here to help. The leader of the alien delegation approached the Human Welcoming Committee, led by the Secretary of Defense. Jake couldn't hear what was said, but he saw the secretary nod gravely before leading the aliens towards the base's main conference center. Hours later, Jake found himself inside the conference center, assigned to guard duty outside the main meeting room. Through the door, he could hear snippets of conversation. The Immortals, or as they call themselves, the Everlasting, have conquered 17 civilizations before yours, the translator conveyed the tentacled alien's words. You are the first to offer meaningful resistance. How Jake heard the secretary ask, what makes us different? There was a pause before the alien responded. Your species possesses a unique combination of adaptability and aggression. You developed weapons capable of overwhelming their regenerative abilities far faster than any race before. The conversation continued, with the aliens sharing crucial information about immortal weaknesses and strategies. Jake's mind raced as he absorbed the intel. The Immortals' regeneration had limits. Their technology, while advanced, wasn't infallible. And most importantly, they had a central command structure that, if disrupted, could throw their entire invasion force into disarray. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the base. Jake's radio crackled to life. All units, we have incoming hostiles. Immortal strike force detected on approach. Protect the delegates at all costs. Jake's training kicked in immediately. He burst into the conference room. Sirs, ma ams, we need to move you to a secure location now. As Jake and his squad escorted the human and alien diplomats to a reinforced bunker beneath the base, the sound of battle erupted above. The Immortals had somehow discovered the meeting and were determined to eliminate this new alliance before it could bear fruit. In the cramped confines of the bunker, Jake found himself standing guard next to the crystalline alien. To his surprise, the being spoke to him in halting English. "Your kind fights well," it said, its voice a strange melodic chime. "We regret not fighting harder when the Everlasting came for us." Jake nodded, unsure how to respond. "We're not going down without a fight," he finally said. The alien's crystalline form shimmered in what Jake thought might be agreement. "Perhaps together we can end their reign." Before Jake could respond, the bunker shook with a massive impact. Dust rained from the ceiling as the sounds of combat grew closer. "Looks like we're about to get our chance," Jake said grimly, checking his weapon. "Stay behind me. I'll make sure you get the opportunity to fight another day." As the battle raged above, Jake stood ready, determined to protect these unexpected allies. He realized that the war had just changed dramatically. Humanity was no longer alone in its struggle against the Immortals. With the knowledge these aliens brought and humanity's fierce determination, Jake allowed himself to hope. Perhaps they really could end the Everlasting's reign of terror across the galaxy. But first, they had to survive this attack, and Corporal Jake Martinez was damn sure going to make that happen. The sun was setting over the Nevada desert as Corporal Jake Martinez adjusted his night vision goggles. It had been 3 weeks since the attack on Andrews Air Force Base, and the alien diplomats' intel had sparked a revolution in Earth's military strategy. Jake and his squad were participating in a joint human-alien training exercise, preparing for a major offensive against the Immortals. The crystalline being he'd met in the bunker, which had introduced itself as Ezeth, stood nearby, its form glowing softly in the twilight. "Remember," People Sergeant Kowalski's voice crackled over the comm, "we're testing the new pulse disruptors today. They should temporarily scramble the Immortals' energy fields, but we need to confirm effectiveness." Jake checked his weapon, a prototype that combined human firearms with alien energy tech. It felt strange in his hands, but if it worked as promised, it could be a game changer. "Say Zith," Jake called out. "You sure your people can simulate the Immortals' defenses accurately?" The crystalline alien shimmered, its way of nodding. "Our data on Everlasting technology is extensive. The simulation will be most accurate." As if on cue, holographic projectors flickered to life across the training ground. Hyper-realistic images of Immortal soldiers materialized, their armor gleaming in the fading light. "All units, engage," Kowalski ordered. Jake and his squad moved forward, using the rocky terrain for cover. As they approached the first group of simulated Immortals, Jake activated his pulse disruptor. A wave of invisible energy rippled out, and the holographic alien's armor flickered, simulating a failure in their defensive fields. Now, Jake shouted, opening fire with his new weapon. Bolts of superheated plasma, infused with a frequency that the aliens had assured them would be particularly damaging to Immortal physiology, streaked towards the targets. The effect was dramatic. Where before it had taken sustained fire to down an Immortal, these new weapons tore through them with terrifying efficiency. As the exercise progressed, Jake found himself working seamlessly alongside Ezeth and the other alien advisors. Their insights into Immortal tactics and weaknesses were proving invaluable. Suddenly, the training simulation flickered and died. A real alarm blared across the base. "This is not part of the exercise." Kowalski's voice was tense. "We've got actual Immortal forces incoming. Looks like they tracked our alien friends here. All units, prepare for real combat." Jake's heart raced as he realized this was no longer a drill. He turned to Ezeth, concern evident in his voice. "You ever seen actual combat?" The crystalline being's form pulsed with what Jake had come to recognize as determination. "I have observed. Now, I will participate. For my fallen world, and for yours." As the first Immortal dropships appeared on the horizon, Jake couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Humanity had come so far in such a short time, adapting alien tech and tactics to create a fighting force unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. All units, deploy pulse disruptors and engage at will, Kowalski ordered. Let's show these everlasting beasts what happens when you piss off the combined forces of the galaxy. Jake activated his disruptor and took aim at the approaching immortals. This was the moment of truth. Would their new weapons and tactics work as well in real combat as they had in simulations? As he squeezed the trigger, sending a stream of enhanced plasma towards the enemy, Jake allowed himself a grim smile. The immortals had come expecting to find a training exercise. Instead, they'd walked into a meat grinder. The battle that followed was intense but one-sided. The new weapons tore through immortal defenses, while coordinated tactics developed with their alien allies kept the human forces one step ahead. Hours later, as the last immortal ship retreated into the night sky, Jake stood amidst the smoking wreckage of the alien force. HFY approached, its crystalline form reflecting the fires burning across the battlefield. "Your kind fights with a ferocity we had not thought possible," the alien said, a note of admiration in its chiming voice. Jake nodded, wiping sweat and grime from his face. "Yeah, well, when you back humans into a corner, we tend to come out swinging." As cleanup crews moved in to salvage immortal tech for study, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of optimism. They'd just gone toe-to-toe with a full immortal assault force and come out on top. Sergeant Kowalski approached, a rare smile on his face. "Good work out there, Martinez. Brass is impressed. They're fast-tracking production of the new weapons. Looks like we might be taking the fight to the immortals sooner than we thought." Jake nodded, his mind already racing with the possibilities. The immortals had started this war thinking they were invincible. Humanity, with a little help from some unexpected friends, was about to teach them the true meaning of mortality. As he helped HFY collect data from the battlefield, Jake allowed himself to hope. The tide was turning, and he, Corporal Jake Martinez of the U.S. Marine Corps, was ready to ride that tide all the way to victory. The skyline of Dallas burned on the horizon as Corporal Jake Martinez's dropship screamed towards the city center. It had been 6 months since the immortals first landed, and humanity was finally ready to take the fight to them in a big way. "All right," Marine Sergeant Kowalski's voice came over the comm. "This is it. Operation Lone Star. We're taking back Texas, and then we're kicking these alien beasts off our planet for good." Jake checked his pulse disruptor one last time. Around him, his squad, a mix of human Marines and alien allies prepared for combat. HFY, the crystalline being, pulsed with an eager light. As the dropship banked hard, avoiding immortal anti-aircraft fire, Jake caught a glimpse of the massive ground force converging on Dallas. Tanks, mechs, and infantry, all equipped with the latest hybrid tech. It was the largest offensive humanity had mounted since the war began. 30 seconds to touchdown, the pilot called out. "LZ is hot. Good luck down there." Jake steeled himself. "Remember, folks, we're fighting for Earth, for all our allied species, and most importantly," he grinned beneath his helmet, "we're fighting for Texas. And if there's one thing these immortal sons of bitches need to learn, it's don't mess with Texas." A cheer went up from the human members of the squad, while their alien allies made sounds that Jake had come to recognize as their equivalent of battle cries. The moment the dropship touched down, Jake was moving. Pulse disruptor fire lit up the night as they engaged the immortal forces. The aliens' usual confidence seemed shaken. They'd never faced an assault of this magnitude before. "Push forward," Kowalski ordered. "We need to take out their command center." Jake led his team through the ruins of downtown Dallas, the battle raging all around them. Immortal ships dueled with human fighters in the sky above, while on the ground, tanks and mechs traded fire with alien war machines. As they approached the immortal stronghold, formerly the iconic reunion tower, Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. A group of civilians, somehow trapped in the war zone, were pinned down by immortal fire. "Sarge, we've got civvies in the crossfire," Jake called out. Kowalski swore. "Martinez, take your team and get those people out. We'll provide covering fire." Without hesitation, Jake signaled to his squad. They moved in perfect sync, human and alien alike, their months of training paying off. "Say Zith, disruptor field," Jake ordered. The crystalline being pulsed brightly, emitting a wave of energy that scrambled the Immortals' weapons and defenses. In that moment of confusion, Jake and his team struck. Pulse disruptor fire tore through the Immortal ranks. Jake's enhanced plasma rifle found its mark again and again, dropping the once unkillable aliens with ruthless efficiency. As the last Immortal fell, Jake rushed to the civilians. "U.S. Marines," he called out. "We're here to get you out." A woman, clutching a young child, looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Thank God," she breathed. We thought no one was coming." Jake helped her up. "Ma, we're taking back our home. No one gets left behind." As they escorted the civilians to safety, the battle for Dallas raged on. But with every passing hour, it became clear that the tide had turned. The Immortals, for the first time, were on the defensive. By dawn, Reunion Tower was in human hands. Jake stood at the top, looking out over the battered but unbowed city. Beside him, Sergeant Kowalski and Zik surveyed the aftermath. "We did it," Jake said, a note of awe in his voice. "We actually did it." Kowalski nodded. "Damn right we did. This is just the beginning, Martinez. We've got a planet to take back." Zith's crystalline form shimmered. "Your victory here will resonate across the galaxy. The Everlasting have never suffered a defeat like this." As if to punctuate the aliens' words, a cheer went up from the forces below. Jake saw soldiers, human and alien alike, embracing, celebrating their hard-fought victory. "You know," Jake said, a grin spreading across his face, "I think it's time we change the Immortals' name. How about we start calling them the Not-So-Everlasting?" Kowalski chuckled. "I like it. Has a nice ring to it." As the sun rose over Dallas, Jake felt a surge of hope. They'd proven that the Immortals could be beaten, that humanity and its allies could stand against the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. The war was far from over, but today, in the heart of Texas, they'd taken a giant leap towards victory. And Jake was ready for whatever came next. After all, if the Immortals thought taking Earth would be easy, they'd just learned a harsh lesson. Don't mess with Texas. And definitely don't mess with humanity. The Immortal stronghold loomed before them, a twisted spire of alien architecture that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Corporal Jake Martinez crouched behind a crumbling wall, his pulse disruptor at the ready. It had been 2 months since the liberation of Dallas, and the war had entered a new phase. "Firefly Actual, this is Reaper 6, Jake whispered into his comm. "We're in position, awaiting your go." "Copy that, Reaper 6," came the reply. "Commence Operation Trojan Horse on my mark." Jake glanced at his team. Human Marines and alien allies, all trained for this high-risk mission deep in Immortal territory. EXA Zith pulsed softly beside him, its crystalline form camouflaged to blend with the rubble. 3-2-1 mark. In an instant, the quiet was shattered. Human aircraft screamed overhead, drawing the Immortals' attention with a ferocious bombardment. Under the cover of this distraction, Jake and his team moved. They slipped through a gap in the Immortal defenses, using tech reverse-engineered from captured alien gear to fool the security systems. As they penetrated deeper into the stronghold, Jake couldn't shake a feeling of unease. It was too easy. His suspicions were confirmed as they reached the central chamber. Instead of the command center they expected, they found themselves face to face with a squad of Immortal elites. "It's a trap," Jake yelled, diving for cover as energy bolts sizzled past. The battle that ensued was chaos. The Immortals had clearly been waiting for them, their weapons and armor more advanced than anything Jake had seen before. "They've adapted," ESA Zith chimed, its voice strained as it deflected an energy blast. "Their technology, it's evolving." Jake gritted his teeth, firing his pulse disruptor in short, controlled bursts. The weapon was less effective than it had been in previous engagements, but it still gave them a fighting chance. As the firefight raged, Jake noticed something odd. The Immortals weren't trying to kill them, they were herding them towards a specific area of the chamber. "Fall back," he ordered, realizing too late what was happening. A shimmering energy field sprang up, cutting off their retreat. They were trapped. An immortal commander stepped forward, its armor more ornate than the others. When it spoke, its voice was surprisingly melodious. "Humans," it said, the word dripping with disdain, "you have proven troublesome, but your resistance ends here." Jake raised his weapon, but the immortal made no move to attack. Instead, it gestured to a large view screen that flickered to life behind it. The screen showed images from around the globe, immortal forces unleashing terrifying new weapons. Cities encased in stasis fields, armies turned to stone, entire regions wiped clean of life. "You forced us to accelerate our plans," the immortal continued, "to unveil technologies we had hoped to introduce gradually. Your planet will still be ours, but the price in lives will be regrettable." Jake felt a cold knot of dread in his stomach. They'd pushed the immortals too far, too fast, and now all of humanity was paying the price. But as he looked around at his team, human and alien alike, battered but unbowed, he felt a spark of defiance ignite. "You're right about one thing," Jake said, his voice steady. "This resistance does end here. Because from now on, we're not resisting, we're taking the fight to you with everything we've got." Before the immortal could respond, XA-Zith pulsed brightly. The energy field trapping them flickered and died. Now Jake yelled. His team sprang into action, years of training and months of combat experience culminating in this moment. They fought with a ferocity that seemed to catch the immortals off guard. In the chaos, Jake managed to access a console, uploading a virus developed by Earth's best tech experts and alien allies. As alarms blared and systems crashed around them, he realized they'd accomplished their mission after all, just not in the way they'd planned. Firefly Actual, Jake called into his comm as they fought their way out of the crumbling stronghold. Mission accomplished. But sir, things just got a whole lot worse. As they emerged into the harsh light of day, Jake saw the world with new eyes. The war had escalated beyond anything they'd imagined, but humanity had come too far to give up now. Looking at his team bloodied, exhausted, but alive, Jake knew that the real battle was just beginning. The immortals had shown their hand, unleashed their full might. Now it was humanity's turn to show what they were truly capable of when pushed to the brink. As dropships roared in to extract them, Jake allowed himself a grim smile. The immortals thought they'd dealt a crushing blow. But they were about to learn that humanity was at its most dangerous when the odds were stacked against them. The escalation had begun, and Corporal Jake Martinez was ready to see it through to the bitter end. The ruins of Paris loomed in the distance as Corporal Jake Martinez and his mixed team of human and alien operatives made their way through the French countryside. It had been 3 weeks since the immortals unleashed their devastating new weapons, and the world was reeling. "Status check," Jake whispered into his comm. "Perimeter secure," came Sergeant Kowalski's reply. "No sign of immortal patrols." Zith pulsed softly. "Energy readings consistent with intel. The immortal research facility should be 2 kilometers ahead." Jake nodded grimly. After the disastrous mission that revealed the immortals' escalation, High Command had green-lit a series of high-risk operations deep in enemy territory. Their objective: gather intel on the aliens' new tech, and if possible, find a way to counter it. As they approached the outskirts of Paris, Jake was struck by the eerie silence. The once bustling city was now a ghost town, its population either evacuated or trapped in one of the immortals' stasis fields. "Hold up," Jake signaled, spotting movement ahead. Through his enhanced scope, he saw a group of humans moving purposefully through the ruins. "We've got locals, armed." Kowalski swore softly. "Collaborators." Negative. Zith chimed in, its crystalline form shifting to analyze the group. "Their energy signatures suggest resistance fighters." Jake made a split-second decision. "Let's make contact. They might have intel we need." Approaching cautiously, Jake's team soon found themselves face-to-face with a ragtag group of French resistance fighters. Their leader, a hard-eyed woman named Simone, eyed the mixed human-alien group warily. "American," she said, her accent thick, and others. "What brings you to our lovely occupied Paris?" Jake gave her a quick rundown of their mission. Simone's eyes widened as he mentioned the Immortal Research Facility. "We've been watching that place for weeks," she said. "Strange energy readings, immortal scientists coming and going. Whatever they're working on in there, it's big." With the resistance fighters' help, Jake's team was able to infiltrate the facility under the cover of darkness. What they found inside chilled them to the bone. Vast chambers filled with stasis pods, each containing a perfectly preserved human. Laboratories where immortal scientists conducted horrific experiments on their captives. And at the heart of it all, a massive device that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. "My God," Kowalski breathed. "They're not just conquering us, they're harvesting us." Zith's form flickered with what Jake had come to recognize as distress. "This technology, it's designed to extract and store human consciousness. They're not just taking your bodies, but your very essence." Jake felt a cold fury building inside him. "We need to shut this place down. Now." What followed was a frantic race against time. While part of the team worked to free as many captives as possible, Jake and Zith focused on the central device. Using a combination of human ingenuity and alien knowledge, they managed to overload its systems. As alarms blared and immortal security forces closed in, Jake turned to Simone. "Get your people and the freed captives out. We'll hold them off." Simone nodded grimly. "Bon chance, American. Give these beasts hell." The ensuing battle was fierce. Jake's team, though outnumbered, fought with the desperation of those who had seen the true face of their enemy. Their hybrid weapons tore through immortal defenses, while Zith's abilities kept the alien reinforcements at bay. Just as it seemed they might be overwhelmed, the facility's core went critical. The explosion rocked the entire complex, bringing down walls and scrambling immortal systems. In the chaos, Jake and his team managed to fight their way out, linking up with Simone's resistance fighters at the extraction point. As their stealth dropship lifted off, leaving the burning facility behind, Jake allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. They'd struck a significant blow against the immortals and gathered crucial intelligence. But the cost had been high. 2 of his team hadn't made it out, and the horrors they'd witnessed would haunt them all. Back at the hidden Allied base in the Alps, Jake delivered his report to a grim-faced council of human and alien leaders. "The immortals aren't just trying to conquer us," he concluded. "They're trying to consume us. Our bodies, our minds, everything." There was a heavy silence as the implications sank in. Finally, the human general spoke. "You've done well, Corporal. This intelligence may be the key to turning the tide." As the meeting adjourned, Jake found himself standing next to Zith, looking out over the snow-capped mountains. "We always wondered why they called themselves the Everlasting," the crystalline being chimed softly. "Now we know. They seek to achieve true immortality by absorbing the essence of other species." Jake nodded, his jaw set with determination. "Well, they picked the wrong species to mess with. Humanity's not going down without a fight." As he watched the sun set over the Alps, Jake knew that the war had entered its most crucial phase. The immortals' true nature was revealed, and the stakes couldn't be higher. But for the first time since the invasion began, he felt a glimmer of real hope. They had the intel, they had the technology, and most importantly, they had the unbreakable will to survive. The immortals were about to learn that humanity's spirit was the one thing they could never harvest or break. The war room of the underground Allied Command Center buzzed with tension. Corporal Jake Martinez stood at attention, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the current state of the global conflict. 6 months had passed since their mission in Paris, and the situation had grown increasingly desperate. General Hawkins, the grizzled leader of Earth's combined forces, addressed the assembled group of human and alien leaders. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored allies, Dr. Yuki Tanaka has an announcement." Dr. Tanaka, a brilliant virologist, stepped forward. Her eyes were sunken from months of sleepless nights, but they burned with a fierce determination. "We've done it. The anti-immortal virus is ready for deployment." A murmur ran through the room. Jake felt a mix of hope and unease. They'd been working on this virus for months, combining human medical knowledge with alien biotechnology. It was designed to target the Immortals' regenerative abilities, turning their greatest strength into a fatal weakness. However, Dr. Tanaka continued, her voice grave, we cannot predict all of its effects. There's a chance it could mutate, potentially affecting other life forms. The risk is small, but it exists. The room erupted into heated debate. Jake listened as military leaders argued for immediate deployment, while others urged caution. The alien representatives were split, some seeing the virus as their best hope, others fearing unintended consequences. General Hawkins raised his hand for silence. I understand the concerns, but we're running out of options and time. The Immortals now control 70% of Earth's surface. We need to act. He turned to Jake. Corporal Martinez, you and your team will be responsible for deploying the virus at key Immortal strongholds. Your first target is their main cloning facility in what used to be Beijing. Questions? Jake stepped forward, his mind racing. Sir, with respect, are we sure this is the right move? If this virus mutates, we could be looking at a pandemic that affects humans and our allies. The general's eyes softened slightly. I understand your reservations, son. But sometimes in war we have to take calculated risks. The alternative is the extinction of not just humanity, but potentially all the species the Immortals have in their sights. Jake nodded, though the knot in his stomach didn't ease. He glanced at Zith, seeing his own conflicted feelings reflected in the alien's crystalline form. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Jake's team was outfitted with the latest stealth tech and given crash courses in viral deployment. The weight of their mission hung heavy over them all. As they boarded the stealth dropship that would take them to Beijing, Sergeant Kowalski placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. Hell of a thing, isn't it, to hold the fate of the world in our hands? Jake managed a grim smile. Just another day at the office, right, Sarge? The flight to Beijing was tense and silent. Each member of the team was lost in their own thoughts, contemplating the magnitude of what they were about to do. As they approached the sprawling Immortal cloning facility, Jake addressed his team. Remember, we get in, plant the virus in their central air system, and get out. Clean and quick. The insertion went smoothly at first. Using their advanced stealth tech and Zith's abilities, they managed to penetrate deep into the facility undetected. But as they reached the central air control room, all hell broke loose. Alarms blared as Immortal guards swarmed in from all directions. Jake and his team found themselves in the fight of their lives. Martinez Kowalski shouted over the din of battle. Get that virus deployed. We'll hold them off. Jake fought his way to the control panel, the vial of virus clutched tightly in his hand. As he prepared to release it, he hesitated for a split second, the weight of his actions hitting him full force. In that moment of hesitation, an Immortal energy blast caught him in the side, sending him sprawling. The vial flew from his hand, arcing through the air in what seemed like slow motion. Zith, seeing Jake fall, made a split-second decision. The crystalline being lunged forward, catching the vial and slamming it into the release mechanism. As the virus dispersed into the air system, the effect on the Immortals was immediate and horrifying. Their regenerative abilities went into overdrive, causing their bodies to twist and mutate uncontrollably. In the chaos that followed, Jake and his team fought their way out of the facility, watching as the virus spread rapidly through the Immortal ranks. As their extraction ship lifted off, Jake looked down at the facility, now engulfed in flames. He felt a complex mix of emotions: relief at their success, horror at the devastation, and a gnawing worry about potential unforeseen consequences. It's done, he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. For better or worse, it's done. As they sped back towards Allied territory, reports started coming in from around the globe. The virus was working, decimating Immortal forces everywhere. But there were also troubling reports of mutations affecting other life forms in heavily infected areas. Jake exchanged a look with Zith, both of them understanding the gravity of what they'd set in motion. The war might be turning in their favor, but at what cost? As Earth came into view, beautiful and blue against the darkness of space, Jake couldn't help but wonder, in their desperate bid to save humanity, had they unleashed something that might ultimately destroy it? The final battle was coming, and with it, the true test of whether humanity and all of Earth's life could survive not just the immortals, but the drastic measures taken to defeat them. The Texas sun beat down on Corporal Jake Martinez as he stood atop a hill overlooking the ruins of Houston. It had been 6 months since the deployment of the virus, and the world was forever changed. "Penny, for your thoughts," Marine came a familiar voice. Jake turned to see Sergeant Kowalski approaching, his once crisp uniform now weathered and patched. "Just thinking about how far we've come, Sarge, and how much we've lost." The aftermath of the virus deployment had been chaotic. It had devastated the immortal forces, breaking their hold on Earth in a matter of weeks. But the cost had been high. Mutations had spread, affecting ecosystems and even some human populations in the hardest-hit areas. "General Hawkins is expecting us," Kowalski said. The final debrief. As they made their way to the makeshift command center, Jake reflected on the past months. The immortals, their forces decimated and their everlasting nature shattered, had retreated from Earth, but they'd left behind a world forever altered. Inside the command center, Jake found a gathering of familiar faces. General Hawkins, Dr. Tanaka, and representatives from their alien allies, including Zith, the crystalline being pulsed in greeting as Jake entered. Corporal Martinez. General Hawkins nodded. "Glad you could join us. We're here to discuss the future." Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, her face a mix of pride and regret. "The virus has been contained. We've developed a neutralizing agent that's being distributed globally. The mutations have stopped spreading," but she paused. "Some changes are permanent." Jake thought of the new species that had emerged in the virus's wake, the altered landscapes, the humans who'd been changed. "What's the final tally, sir?" he asked. General Hawkins sighed. "We lost 20% of the global population between the immortals and the virus. Another 5% are changed. But we're rebuilding, and we're not alone." He gestured to the alien representatives. "Our allies have pledged their support in the reconstruction efforts, and more are coming. Word of our victory has spread across the galaxy. Earth is becoming a symbol of resistance against the immortals." Zith chimed in, its voice resonating with a new depth. "Your world has paid a heavy price, but in doing so, you've liberated countless species from the threat of the everlasting. The galaxy owes you a debt." Jake felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride in what they'd accomplished, grief for what they'd lost, and uncertainty about the future. "So what happens now, sir?" General Hawkins smiled, a rare sight. "Now, Corporal? Now we rebuild, we adapt, we take our place among the stars." The meeting continued, outlining plans for global reconstruction, for integrating the changed populations, for developing new technologies with their alien allies. But Jake found his mind wandering. After the debrief, he found himself walking with Zith through the recovering streets of Houston. New buildings were rising amid the ruins, and the air buzzed with the sound of reconstruction. "Your kind continues to surprise me," Jake said. "In the face of near extinction, you not only survived but thrived." Jake nodded, watching as a group of children, some human, some clearly affected by the virus mutations, played together in a makeshift park. "That's what we do, I guess. Adapt and overcome, no matter the odds." As they reached the top of a hill, Jake saw something that made him pause. A massive starship was under construction in what used to be the Houston spaceport. Its sleek lines incorporated both human and alien design elements. "Is that what I think it is?" he asked, awe in his voice. Zith's form shimmered with what Jake had come to recognize as excitement. "Indeed. The first of Earth's new exploration fleet. Your people are taking their first steps into the wider galaxy." Jake felt a surge of pride and hope. Yes, they had suffered. Yes, the world had changed in ways they were still struggling to understand. But humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged stronger. As the sun set over the Houston skyline, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Jake allowed himself to truly relax for the first time in years. The war was over. The future, with all its uncertainties and possibilities, stretched out before them. "You know," he said to Zith, a smile playing on his lips. "I think I'm ready for a new adventure. How about you?" The crystalline being pulsed brightly. "I believe, my friend, that the greatest adventures are yet to come." As they stood there, a human soldier and an alien ally, watching the birth of a new era, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. They had proven that humanity could face down the greatest threat in the galaxy. Now it was time to see what else they could accomplish. The Immortals had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they'd awakened a sleeping giant. And now, that giant was ready to take its place among the stars. Jake grinned. Whatever the galaxy had in store for them next, he knew one thing for certain: humanity was ready. After all, if they could beat the Immortals, there wasn't much they couldn't do. As the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Jake Martinez, once a simple Marine from Texas, now a hero of Earth, looked to the future with hope and determination. The next chapter of human history was about to begin, and he was ready to help write it. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.